This is how I went from nothing to $800,000. This is the real story. No shortcuts, no lottery, no overnight success. You cannot win the game if you don't know the rules. And at 25 years old, I just happened to figure out the rules to the game. Here's how. When I was 25 years old, I was working at AT&T with a couple of friends, and one day they both put a couple of $100 into the stock market. They bought some penny stocks and they 6x'd their money in just like 3 weeks. One day they woke up and they came and they had like a couple $1,000s. We were all blown away. We thought this was the coolest thing ever. At that moment, I decided I would buy some penny stocks. And I immediately lost $100. Lesson learned. Now, by this time, 25 years old, I was starting to wonder. I've been working since I was 14 years old, and I've made many thousands of dollars in my life, but I don't really have anything to show for it. There has to be a better way, I thought. So instead of buying penny stocks, different various stocks, I bought dividend stocks like Maine, Microsoft, Roku, and others. Now, at this point in life, I was the best salesman at my store, and I was getting ready to get promoted to assistant manager and move over to another town where I prepare for my future role as store manager. I got a nice hefty bump in pay, and soon I'm going to show you what I made from 25 years old up until today. When I got promoted to assistant manager, you move from one store to another. So one day you don't wake up and you're coworkers with these people, and then the next day you're their manager. Now, I had just moved from my hometown about an hour away. And at this point, I had been investing in various different individual stocks, just thinking that blue chip stocks were now the way to go. And I had then got on the phone with a friend from college and we were just BSing. And he had told me about a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read this book right after that, and boom, a light bulb went off in my head, and it just everything changed. The entire way that I thought about money changed. I didn't realize that you just need to buy assets, avoid liabilities, and with enough time, you can become rich. Now, you want to buy assets that for sure go up in value. You don't want to speculate and buy things that you think might go up in value. This is what I had thought at that time, and I still mostly believe today. Now, at this point, I was starting to listen to biggerpockets.com and I was getting an interest in real estate as well. I was listening to different audiobooks, reading different books, listening to YouTube, and just anything I could get my hands on that talked about assets and liabilities. I was deep diving and learning as much as I could about money. Now, at this point, I was still buying some individual stocks, and everyone around me was saying that VOO was the best investment. You cannot outperform the S&P 500 is what everyone was saying, whether it was biggerpockets.com, whether it was people on YouTube. So, of course, I listened to everyone else and I bought VOO. I sold all of my individual stocks and I only held VOO. After a period of time, I realized this was the slowest. It took so long to go up in value. So I researched some other things. I found XLK, I found VGT eventually, and now those are some of my bigger holdings. VOO has a part in my portfolio, but I treat it more like a bond than anything else. I was then promoted to store manager. Nice. Another bump in pay. And I moved back to my hometown for just a few months before getting transferred over to a bigger store in Minnesota, where I bought my first house. Now, at this time, it was 2020, and this house was around 100 years old, and I bought it for $173,000 and that got an interest rate of just 3.75%. Now, today in 2025, if I fix this home up and put maybe $20,000 into it, it will be worth around 260 to 280. Granted, that's a lot of money to put into the house, right? A few months after this, COVID hit and it wrecked my tiny little stock portfolio. I didn't have much money in stocks at the time, but it was everything I had. Now, even though I only had a small portfolio, I knew that this was an overreaction to the events that were going on, and I bought as much as I could. Here is where I made a big error. Now it wasn't so much an error as it was a missed opportunity. I didn't realize that I could use margin or debt to buy more shares. I missed out on a huge buying opportunity. Now I was debt free outside of the house and a couple $1,000s in student loans. Just like everyone tells you, just like Dave Ramsey and your parents and everybody else, I thought debt was bad. I thought all debt was bad. And I didn't question the narrative. Shame on me. Now, before moving into this house, I decided that I was going to live there for a year, move out, turn it into a rental, and then buy another house. So I did that. I bought another house for 243,000. This house was much newer. It was built in maybe the 70s, and I got a 2.5% interest rate. Hooray! Now, for both of these houses, I made an egregious error. I sold my stocks for the down payment. Now, at the time, I didn't know any better, and I was just learning as I go. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't know anything except for what I learned from experience, books, podcasts, and YouTube. Again, shame on me for selling shares. Today, I would not do the same thing. Right around this time, I had another life defining moment. I saw an Instagram reel from Damon from Shark Tank talking about how rich people buy stocks, they never sell them, they borrow against them, and they buy more shares. What? You can do that? Now, at this time, it was early 2022, right as we're entering into the bear market. It lasted all year, and interest rates were at all time lows. You could get debt for as low as 2% interest. I did this with both a car and with margin. Now, after seeing this Instagram reel, I researched as much as I could about margin, and I noticed that Fidelity had 12% interest rates. That's not low. Damon just said that I could get low interest rates and never sell my shares. What? So, I did some more research and I found this brokerage that I've never heard of called M1 Finance. There was 2% interest rates. Enough said. I transferred my money the next day. At this time, I pulled my phone out, pulled up my notes app, and I documented everything. I wrote this little mini ebook and I titled it Money Isn't Real. It was just a few pages long, and I documented my entire understanding of money at the time. I now knew the Fed prints money, debt is money, and I could create more money by borrowing it to buy things that go up in value. You can buy way more faster if you use debt rather than just your normal income. Noted. Very interesting. I wish I had realized this sooner. I could have made a lot more money during the COVID dip and having never sold any shares to use as down payments for my previous houses. By this time, I was ready to get another house. I mean, that was the plan when I moved in. Why not stick to the plan? I wasn't really sure if I liked real estate or stocks better, and they were both doing great. By the way, today I found out that I like stocks way more than real estate, and it isn't even close. I paid $280,000 for this next house, even though it was the same age and it was arguably not as nice. I got a 4% interest rate with an FHA loan, which is just essentially like a first time home buyer program. I didn't know this at the time, but with a FHA loan, you have a much bigger private mortgage insurance payment, a much bigger PMI payment. It was $200, whereas with my conventional loan, it was only about $95. I'm paying double the amount for insurance that's just there for the banks in case I maybe don't make my payment. Wonder why the lender didn't tell me about this. Well then, lesson learned. Always get either a conventional or, if you qualify, a VA loan or USDA loan. At this time, I was just wrapping up my career at AT&T, and they were laying off everybody in town and turning the store into a privately owned authorized retailer. Now, I had the choice. I could either move and transfer with the company and keep my job, or I could take a severance, and at the time it would be about 12 grand based on how long I was with the company and my position. I had a couple rentals in the town. I chose the severance. I wanted to stay near my rentals. What to do now? Time to look for new jobs. I was talking to Target as a sales manager or Spectrum doing business to business sales, both at the same time trying to decide where to go next. I thought Spectrum would be a better fit, and they offered me $40,000 a year plus commission. Now, this was too low, actually, so I meant it when I was negotiating with them, telling them that I just can't work for that price. I negotiated a $10,000 bump in pay to a $50,000 a year base and the title of senior sales rep. Full disclosure, I absolutely hated doing business to business with Spectrum, and in general it just felt like a knockoff version of AT&T. Since I was making a lot less money than before and financial independence was very important to me, I decided to house hack. Now it was about halfway through 2022 and I decided to get two different roommates. This covered my entire mortgage. Now, I only worked at Spectrum for about a year, year and a half, and then I decided that I had enough of doing business to business sales, and I went to go work at a small startup property management company in town that was rapidly buying up everything. My new base here was 50,000. But I could sell homes in my free time and I actually enjoyed being at work. Score! I worked my ass off and I provided as much value as I possibly could, surely they would notice. And they did. Now, in 2025, I'm making way more money than I have ever made. Let's take a look at how much I made every year since the beginning of my journey. 25 years old, when I was working at AT&T and just starting out, I made 60 grand. No roommate. When I got bumped up to assistant manager, 70 grand. No roommate. 27 years old, 75 grand. No roommate. Getting paid overtime at this time, plus commission. Not bad. 28 years old, still assistant manager, making 77K, worked a little bit more overtime, no roommate. 29 years old, store manager, plus a severance, decided to get a roommate and bump my income up big time. Over here, I have some defining life moments. So this is where I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is where I saw the Instagram reel from Damon from Shark Tank, and it frickin' changed my life. Probably more than these two are just so important, key defining moments. Now, after AT&T had offered a severance and I took it, I had made about 65K with Spectrum. Now I know I just told you I made 50K. Shortly after, they bumped up everybody's pay by 10K, and then plus commission. I didn't make much in commission, right? I ended up with about 65K that year. Boo. Now, I've heard from other people before that you have a thermostat for your income and just different things in your life, right? What I mean by that is I am comfortable now at a much higher dollar value than 99K, but you will find a way to either sabotage or find a way to make that much money again. So if you're comfortable making 77K, if you start to go way above that, you might find a way back down to 77K, or if you go way below that, you might find a way back up to 77K. It's just natural. It's just the way things work out. And I've found that to be pretty true. So you need to adjust your thermostat. Now, first year at the startup company, I made 70K base and I made 29K in real estate commissions. Still had a roommate. This whole time I've decided it's just totally worth it if financial independence is important to you to just have a roommate. I mean, you have one when you're younger, right? You live with your family, you might have brothers and sisters, like you live with people. It's not that bad. If you have a family, it might be different, but if you don't, you might want to strongly consider it. Here, I'm sure you're wondering what the next life-defining moment is. Well, I'm getting much better about paying people to do the tasks that are not a good use of my time so that I can use my time to make more money. That has been another life-defining moment. I'm reading the book right now, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and it is another life-defining moment, though I wouldn't say it's quite as strong as these other two. So, hope you enjoyed the story. If you have any questions or if you maybe want to hear even further back than 25 years old, drop it in the comment section below. I personally think that this is where my journey began, and I'm happy to share before that. Until this moment, though, at 25 years old, I was essentially walking around life with my eyes closed, bumping into walls, wondering why I didn't have anything. So, hope this helped, and I hope you learned a lot. See you next time.